All right, here we go. So we're going to look at this SQL assignment. And I'll make this a little bigger. So there's an assignment folder called SQL. I just made that. And we're going to end up with a single file that we submit for this assignment called examples.sql. Just going to make that right now, okay? And you guys can work along if you want, or just listen, whatever you want to do. You can tell me to slow up. I'm going too fast. And we're all ready because we've got Postgres installed. I'm on the Mac, so I'm going to start it up. And on the Mac, it's just an application that you launch. And where is it? There it is. So I just run it. There it is. I could hit Open PSQL. That's called a command line client. I don't like to open it from there. I like to run it from the terminal window. So see, on the Mac here, you get this little icon here. It shows you. Well, it's even got links to documentation. That's very useful. So see, I can use PSQL, and then I'm in, and I have this prompt. You guys are there? You got your servers running? PSQL running? Got another file open called examples.sql. All those things. There we go. Now in here, you've got commands. You've got two kinds of commands. You've got SQL commands that are generic that work in all these databases. You know, MySQL, SQL Server, Oracle's system. I forget the name of their database. And so you've got these generic SQL commands, you know, like show databases. I think maybe one of them. Maybe not. Show tables. It's been a while since I did this. That doesn't work either. So how do you? Maybe that's not SQL. So it'll be something like create table. This is an SQL. Create table Fred, you know, and then you give it all that stuff. So those are the generic SQL commands, and then you've got the database-specific commands, and every database has a different set of these. And in Postgres, you use this backslash, so I can do \, and it gives me a list of commands to look at. This is very nice. My up and down arrow keys work for that. So you know, /h name. That's help on syntax of SQL commands. Let's try that one. Watch this. I just pressed Q, by the way, to put that. I do /h create table. Look at that. See? Create table. I actually never knew this before. I usually go on the web and look this up. And then it has the syntax. And you know, this syntax, I got to say, this is not easy to read. This is, you know, it's like, you know, B and F notation or something like that. And so this notation is so dense. It's not that useful for me. I like to look at examples. And then I'd look at the notation if I need to. So that's that. And then to exit, you of course use /q. So /q to exit. So that's called the command line client. And let's see what else we need to know here. So I think there's, how do we list the databases? I think it's /L. There's a lot of /Ds here. But I remembered from last time that /L lists the databases. So it shows this list of databases in a table format. There's the database name, that's the first column. There's the owner of the database. I guess that's the character encoding that's used for character data. And this is how character data is sequenced. How the the comparison operation is implemented. I don't know what C type is. Something related to the character encoding. Access privileges. I don't know how to read this, but we could figure it out if we needed to. These are the databases that I have. So I'm going to create a database called SAM. And I know there might be a way for me to do it here. Maybe I'll just try this, but I don't think this is going to work. If I do create database SAM, maybe it worked. Well, there it is. SAM is right there. Okay, that's one way to do it. In the instructions, I think I show a different way. There it is. There's a command line. You can create SAM here. So what I could do here, I could drop database SAM. See that? Then /L. Now SAM is gone. So that's one way to create and delete a database. If I quit the command line client, then I have this. I have a command that's in my path, because I have it in my path. This comes with the Postgres server, create DB SAM. So I'm going to get the same result. There's SAM. And there's this concept of a user. So when I'm fuzzy on this, I don't use this a lot. So, but you have to pay attention to that. Databases have users, and different users have different privileges to do different things. Like one user might have full privileges on one database, might have restricted or no privileges on another database. And I think that it created, this user for me automatically. This is my Linux user name. And I think that when I installed, Mac username, and when I created the database, that it used, it generated this database user for me automatically, and sort of have that in there anywhere. So anyway, you got to read that stuff. Can you guys get this running? Is this stuff working for you? Like /L? You're all right? Okay. So now, there's to list the tables. There's I think it's DT to list tables. And I think it's like, how do I go to a database? I think it's C /C. If I go and look at gift. Oh yeah, connect to database gift. So I would do /DT. I've got a table called users. See? So I'm going to go back to /connect to SAM. So notice that that I get many databases running, and in this command line client, you select a database that's current. So you can work on any number of databases. Now, the Postgres server is a database server. So I have multiple databases that I can operate on through the running server. That's just a concept you got to get into understood. Also, if and there's another way to get in there. So if I do this, if I run PSQL and then gift, that's one of the databases, gift. If I include that on the command line, I think that pops me right in there. Yeah, there it is. So that's that's a way to start the command line client with a selected database on the command line. But I want to use SAM. And SAM has no relations or no tables. There's no relations. It's a relational database. There's no table. All right. So now what we want to do is, how do you create a table? And it's going to look something like, you know, it's a command, create table. By the way, this is case sensitive, so you know this could be mixed case. I'll create a table called test. I'll hit enter. Look at that. The prompt is a little different because it's a line continuation. It says, "Oh, you haven't finished the command yet, so you got to keep entering in the rest of the command." Let's take a look at this documentation. And where are the SQL commands? Here it is. So these are all the SQL commands. This is alter. This is how you change the structure of a table. And then there's create. There's just create database, and you're going to have create table in there. So you can think about the database. The server has got many databases, and each database has got many tables. Each table has many columns, like that. So what we want to do, we've got an empty database called SAM right now. I want to create a table. And this is the syntax described precisely, and that's just very hard to read. So we're going to skim over that, and then we're going to come down to the examples. And I know that there's examples here because I checked the other day. And this is a lot of documentation. There we go, finally. So you've got create, table, and a lot of people use all caps on the SQL commands by convention. I like to use lowercase, but people use all caps a lot. This is the name of the table, and I think I've got that so far. Create table test, see? And then I opened up the parenthesis. And now you list out, these are the column names, code, title, did, so on. And this one has a special attribute assigned to it called the primary key. So every table should have a primary key. It doesn't have to have a primary key. But normally a table has what's called a primary key. It's the thing that you use to look up records. So these tables get to have a lot of rows. And you don't want to search through the rows sequentially to find something. You want to jump to a record quickly, jump to a row quickly in a large table using the primary key. So it's kind of a way to get somewhere fast. And so let's go ahead and do something. Here's a typical, I gotta remember this. So we've got the name of the column, then the data type, followed by the rest of these attributes. So the name of the column, I'm going to call it ID, and the data type will be, say, varchar 255. That means a variable length character string with a maximum length of 255 bytes or 255 characters. I'm not sure which one. And you can't go beyond 255. If you go higher than 255, then you need to use like a character large object, a claw, or a text, whatever the data type is. Maybe it's called text. So this is and you can make a varchar a primary key. That's about the biggest character. That's the largest character string you can use for a primary key, 255 maximum bytes. So there's the primary key, and then let's create another field called, I'll call it num, and that'll be an integer. And what does an integer look like? Just integer. Also, not null means it can't be null. So these column entries can be null. I'll put that in there, not null. And just for the sake of completeness, let's have another one in there, which is, say, description. DESC, and that'll be, make it a varchar as well. We'll allow it to be null. And you can give it a default value, actually. But I'm not going to do that now. Look at some of these examples. is a way to assign, there it is, default. So we could do something like defaults, no description, something like that. You can do that. So when you create the row, it'll assign that default value, but I'm not going to do that. And I'll close this off with a, we started that parenthesis here, and I'm going to close that off, and then these SQL commands need to be terminated with a semicolon. Ah, something's wrong. Oh, maybe DESC is a reserved word. Is that right? So it rejected it. Now, do you see the problem? I got to type all that in again. Okay? That's why I like to use this technique. So create table, what did I call it? Test. And the first one, it's ID, which is a varchar 255, primary key, comma. And the next one was num, which was an integer, not null. We could let it be null, it's not a big deal. And it was description. So I'm going to get the same failure. So I want to reproduce that failure. Description was a varchar, I believe, 255. And so now, by putting it into this file, examples, that SQL, I can rerun it. And then if I get a failure, I just edit the file. So it looks like this, PSQL SAM. And then I send in, I set the input, standard input to this file. Syntax error. It doesn't like that. Now, we reproduced the error. Now let's see whether it's, because that's a reserved word, let's see if that's the case. It was the case. Look at that. Now watch, back here, I go /DT to list the tables. There it is. There's our test table right there. And now we want to describe that table. It's describe, but I only need 4 characters. Is it describe table test? Is that it? Is it describe test? I can't remember now. How do I render the layout of a table? How do you look at a table? Huh? There's a way to look at it. I thought it was describe. Let's see. Is it in there? Discard, delete. What did I say here? How do you describe a table? How do you... let's take a look here. Update, show, set, select, move, listen, insert, grant, drop. How the heck do you to list the structure of a table? SQL, how to view table structure, something like that. Well, it doesn't look like there's any easy way to do it. Or maybe it's in one of these commands. Is it in there? Describe table /D. If I do /D test, there it is. Look at that. Got it. So there's 3 columns: ID, num, and description. And this is the column type, right? This is, there's the column is in the first column, and the type is in this 3rd column, and then we have modifiers. And notice the ID is set to not null. And the reason is that's automatic because we declared it as a primary key. And the num is not null because we specified not null when we created the table. Okay. Remember, we were here. We made sure that that was not null. Now we could have also done this, but this is redundant. A primary key field cannot be null, so we don't need to do that. And the description is varying character data, max 255. There's no modifiers on that. Then it shows the indices, and the primary key is an index. And you can have other indices. And an index is it's like this data structure that's hidden in the background that lets you look up rows very quickly in the database. So I've got an ID field. There's an index being maintained on this ID field. If I had 1 million rows in the database, the ID is going to be a string, right? Maybe it's like the character, maybe it's a customer account number. And I say, I want customer 009537. And when I do that, the database, because there's an index for that, it'll jump to that row immediately. Well, you know, in like very quickly, like O1 or O log n time, something like that. It says it uses a B tree. It's using a B tree. So that's O log n. And another approach is using a hash table to get there. Anyway, this is what they're doing. So that's creating a table. That's an example. What did I ask for in the assignment, by the way? I don't want to do anything. What did I specify a database name? Oh, gift, right? I said gift, didn't I? Or not? Do we need to use that particular name?
I had trouble with that.
Oh, I did use Sam here. Look at that. All right, so we create a table. How about delete a table? Well, watch this. So we can drop table test. Done. We try to do it again and it'll set errors. Doesn't exist, right? So we go back here and I'm going to create it again. Now watch this. I want to automate this. So we'll drop table test. So first we drop it and then we're going to create it. See that? So as we build up our script, we're going to wipe out what we did and we're going to recreate the new stuff. So this is a standard approach that I use all the time. And so right now you'll see that there's a table in there. But we run this script, we'll delete the table, but then we recreate it again. So we drop the table, and then we're going to create it again. So anyway, so we're building up this script. Insert a new row. Let's do that. So the insert command is insert, and you know, I used to do this a lot, but I don't want to guess. I just want to look it up. So is it insert into? Is that how they do it? Insert into? Insert into, there it is. So insert into test. We can have multiple tables, by the way. We only have one table called test, but we could have another table. We have any number of tables. So we have one table, insert into test. And we're going to do values. So I'm going to take a look at the examples. And yeah, that's how to do it. Insert into test, ID, num, description, values, And the ID is a string, so we're going to put 1, 2, 3, 4. No, I'm going to do it like this, Alice. I'm going to put a username there. And the number is, say, 100, and then the description is another string. And, I'm good. Whatever. So that's the command, insert into the database, and you list the fields that you're going to populate. And then you provide the values. Now these are listed in the same order that I created the table, but they could be in a different order, just as long as the first entry here matches the first entry there. And there's lots of variations. I'll show you those variations. I'm going to create another one of these. So it's PSQL SAM PS. There's an error there. In SQL, do they use quotes? It didn't like this. Maybe it needs. Is this what a string delimiter is? Maybe I didn't have the right delimiter there. Is that right? Should be an apostrophe. That means we'll need to escape this one. Let's try that. It still says something's wrong. Values, I'm good. Syntax error near M. So how do you escape? Oh, how do you escape a quote or an apostrophe? See, that works. Because it's a problem. How do you escape an apostrophe? Do you guys know? Is it double apostrophe? Like that? I just don't remember. Yeah, that's it. You just put two together. So now if you look at this, you're going to select star from test. That's the command. Select all the columns, dump all the columns of the, dump all the columns for all the rows in the database. And you'll see that there's 3 columns, ID, num, and description. I'm good went in there right, Alice, and 100. Let's go ahead and insert some more data. Let's put in Bob now. So we're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to omit the description. I just want to show you that it's going to come up null. Right? And this will be Bob. And put Bob in at 200. And omit this. See, 200 is an integer, so I don't put quotes around it or apostrophes. Now look at, when I run this script again, what does it do? It drops the table. See the convenience of using a script? It drops the table, then it recreates a table, then it inserts the data. There we go. And then we can examine it here. I'll do select star from test. There it is. See, description is empty. I don't know if it's null though. And so we've done these 3 commands, and we have them in the script. How to get a row of data using a primary key. So here we can, when we do select star from test, where ID equals Bob. See that? So we're adding this clause to restrict the select operation. So we don't want everything. This gave us select star from test, gave us everything. The 2 records that we have in there. Now what we want to do is limit the rows that are reported to us using this where clause. So we're using our primary key, which is ID. So use the primary key. So that's get a row of data using a primary key. So we're looking at that here. There, it just shows it to us. And I want to also illustrate this other thing. Star means all columns, but we could specify the columns. We could say ID, comma, num. I think you use parentheses there. Yeah, you do. No, that doesn't work right. I think ID, select ID num from test. There it is. So it limits, it cuts out the description. You see that? So this select operation produces a table. This is a table with 2 columns and 1 row. So we can look at Alice's record, or we could have looked, instead of num, we could look at description. But once again, instead of listing out the columns that we want, if we just want a dump of all the columns, we just use star. It gives us all the columns. You guys want to play with that a little and get used to that? Now, we're almost at the end here. How to update a row in a table based on a primary key. Let's do that. So we can, how do you do that? Is it update? It's update, okay. So update test, set, am I getting that right? Set num equal to 900, where ID is Alice. I'm guessing. So we want to update, want to run an update operation. We want to modify data in the test table. And in particular, we want to write 900 into the num column for all rows that match against this constraint that the ID is Alice. If we left out where ID equal Alice, we would all the num, every row would have num set to 900. That worked. And I'm going to do a dump of the whole data here. There it is. Alice's num field is now set to 900. So that's how to do an update. And I think for the assignment, you should put it in here. In fact, I'm going to copy that. This is what I want for the assignment. I'd like to see this. I'd like to see this in here. In fact, might as well put the select in there as well. You know, select star from test where ID equals Alice. Actually, let's do it like this. Select num, or select ID num from test where ID equals Alice. And then we'll run the update to change num to 900. Then we'll run the same select. And let's see if it works. So we inserted Bob, we insert Alice, or we insert Alice first rather, and then we do a select ID num where ID equals Alice. It shows 100. Then we run an update, and it shows us that it updated 1 record. And then we did another select. This time we see that the num field for Alice is set at 900. So we got that running. What else am I asking for? Delete a row using the primary key. So we're going to, if we select star, you know, from test to see everything, and then we're going to delete. Is it from? Is it delete from test where ID equals Bob? And then we're going to dump everything out again. We'll see that Bob is now missing. Let's see if that works. So this is what it looks like here. That's the whole database. We did one deletion, and now the table is down to one record. So that's a minimal amount of work to do on this exam. Oh, here, I didn't need to type this, but you actually might need to run this that's the full form. I think on Windows, you need to use this -h localhost. See, this is the host. It's how to find the database host. And apparently in my system, it's the default. And this is the database. Well, that's with -d, but I think you can omit the -d apparently. Oh, you're using that on Linux just like that? Let me try it here. Yeah, that's how to do it. So I think on some systems you need to specify it. If you omit localhost, does it work?
When I just ran the SQL,
It doesn't connect, so you need -h localhost. Use -d for the database.
I haven't done it from the
You haven't tried it?
so.
Okay. You guys want me to talk about anything else? This is the very basics of SQL. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that I don't want to get into, like joins, and foreign keys. Foreign keys are very important. So you link tables together using these things called foreign keys. But I'm not going to look at it right now. We're not going to need it in this class. We're just going to keep it really simple. This is enough to do the assignment. Good enough?